Hello everyone, and we're back with another tutorial. This time we're going to be working with Inkscape. Today we're going to be working on this kind of abstract wallpaper with different colors. And I really like this kind of wallpaper because it's really simple, and since we're going to be using Inkscape today, which is a vector graphics editor instead of a raster graphics editor, that means we can scale it up and down to any screen size we like without losing any quality. So we're going to go ahead and download Inkscape, and we can get it from this site, inkscape.org. Alright, we'll go ahead and open a new document. Alright, so opening up Inkscape for the first time, it's going to look something like this. It's just a blank document. But for the purposes of today, we're going to be making a desktop wallpaper. And of course, you can change this later. You can make a mobile wallpaper or whatever you want. So let's go ahead and change the size of our canvas here. So we'll go to File, Document Properties, and it might open a new window. I just like to put it over here. And then we'll just go ahead and pick a 16:9 aspect ratio because that is what this display is. So let's just do 1600:900 just to make things simple. You can use the middle mouse wheel to move around, and you can use control scroll wheel to zoom in and out. So I think it's really important to first pick out what kind of colors you like. As you can see in my example, I just picked out some green colors of different brightnesses, but you might want different colors. So I think a really great resource is this site called Coolors, coolors.code/generate. I'll leave this link in the description, but it's a really nice site because it creates these colors that really complement each other very well. And then you can regenerate them over and over again, and you can save the colors. And then say I really like these two colors, and I can keep regenerating them using the space bar, and then it will pick some colors that kind of mesh well with that. So let's generate some colors. I actually kind of like this palette here because they're kind of the same. So let's go ahead and go with this. So that we've got our colors here. Now let's go into Inkscape and do some stuff. So I'm gonna make a bunch of different layers, and this will help us keep organized. Let's keep our base layer that. I'll make another. Let's make, since we have 5 colors here, let's go ahead and make 6 different layers because we want one for the background color. So now let's go ahead and actually start making our strokes, and this will actually create the effect we're going for here with these long sweeping curves that kind of look like layered paper, layered construction paper. The tool we're going to be using for this is primarily this pen tool, which allows us to create both curves and straight lines. The way we'll do that is you can make straight lines just by clicking, or you can make curves by clicking and dragging. You can see what that does there. So the longer you make it, the more curved. And you can just play around with this. But basically, for the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to make these really long sweeping curves instead of making tiny little curves like this. Because as you can see, if we make tiny curves, it kind of doesn't look right. Instead, we're going to make really long sweeping curves, kind of like this. And it doesn't have to be, it's not an exact science. You can kind of just go for what you like. So as you can see, it actually made a shape here for me. And you can go over to the fill and stroke tab to change what color it is, and your color wheel might be minimized. I like opening it. I personally like this a lot better. But let's go ahead and go to our colors page and pick the color that we want to be the darkest. In this case, it looks like probably this one's the darkest. So let's go ahead and copy that. And we'll make that our darkest color over here in the RGB. And as you can see for my example, I actually have, this is the one we're generating right now, this darkest shade, and then we'll have also another darker background shade. So actually in my case, I have 2 kind of opposing shapes. So let's go ahead and make a second one that kind of mirrors this shape. Same, we're going to be still in layer 1, and I'm going to make another shape using this tool, and we don't want to match it exactly, but we kind of want to make them similar. So I'm just making these really long sweeping curves. Oops, I don't know what happened there. Let's do that again. Really long sweeping curves. Okay, and then we can just finish off that shape. As you can see, and if we want, we can move this around. I didn't really like where that's placed, so we'll just put it. And you can see where the edge of the screen will be, so it doesn't really matter what happens off of here. When we export this as a regular PNG image or JPEG, then this stuff is not going to be, you're not going to be able to see that stuff. So I think this looks pretty good as is. Let's go ahead and move to our next layer. And this one's going to be the next brightest colors, which looks like it's going to be this one. So let's go ahead and copy that. And again, we're gonna use this tool, and this time we're gonna offset it ever so slightly. We're gonna try to copy this shape pretty closely. Of course, it doesn't need to be exact, but we're gonna try to offset, pretty closely. So let's go ahead and do that. Oops, and make sure we're making curves here. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and finish off that shape. Okay, and we also need to paste in our color, which is very slightly different. As you can see, it's almost indecipherable, but it is slightly different. Again, we're going to do the similar thing down here. Okay, and you can see it's already set our second color. So you can see it's starting to come together. Let's go ahead and move on to the next layer, which is going to be this blue. Again, we're going to use our pen tool. Again, trying to mirror the shape, not exactly, because we want it to be kind of organic, not quite, algorithmic. All right. And while I'm moving on with these kind of sweeping curves, I wanted to mention a really great benefit of doing it this way, doing it yourself, which is that it's completely 100% customizable. You can change the colors, you can change the shape to anything you like. And in fact, since again, I mentioned this is a vector graphics editor, you can actually go in and change the aspect ratio and change the size of the image after the fact. You won't even lose any quality. You just go in and move the shapes around. And that's a really great aspect of making your wallpapers yourself. Not to mention you can add in extra little flares like a logo I put in the middle of mine. Anyway, moving on to the next layer. We're coming up to the end here, just two more over here. Copy that. And if you ever mess up for whatever reason, you can always hit the escape key to cancel the stroke. For example, if I say messed up by doing that, oh no, that's not very good. I can hit escape to cancel the stroke while I'm making it, or I can just click the delete key and start again. Okay, just finishing up our last layer here. You can see that it's starting to take shape. It's starting to look pretty good. And of course, when the final image is exported, we're not going to see any of the stuff on the outside. But if you just kind of focus on this middle part, it actually does start to look pretty good. So now let's go ahead and do our finishing touches, and then an extra effect if you want. We still need to add our little background over here. In my case, I added this extra dark green over here. It's almost black, but it's a very deep green. And I think we can benefit from doing something pretty similar. So let's go back to, let's create another layer. Actually, we'll drag this one way down to the bottom, and we don't want this to be on the inside. So I'm just going to actually delete that and make another one. Below care. Okay, so now we have a sixth layer, and this is going to be our background layer. So what I'm going to do actually is copy our deepest color over here. I'm going to make a square just to be our background, and it doesn't, I'll just kind of fill up the entire space. And then I'm going to paste in our deepest color. This is not the color we're looking for, but what we can do is we can actually just nudge it over into the dark side. And that actually looks pretty good right there. So we're done with our background layer, and if you want to do something similar than I did, you can actually grab an SVG, single color logo, and you can actually just slap it in the middle and give it a color. I'm not going to do this for this tutorial. We're just going to stick with this. So actually we're pretty much done. If you like it like this, you can actually just export it right now. And the way you do that is you do File and then Export, and it'll bring up this export menu. We'll just do the page. And you can change the image size. So I'm just going to do 1920 1080 because we know that the aspect ratio is correct. And then we'll just export that as a PNG. And here it is. And actually I think it looks pretty cool if you set this as your wallpaper. It's a pretty nice little pastel background. All right, so moving on, I did mention earlier that there's actually an extra effect you can add to this wallpaper design to make it even better and add the little extra touch to make it kind of stand out from the crowd. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to add a little shadow on the edges of each of these layers. This will kind of extend, like kind of leverage the fact that this is kind of mimicking the look of construction paper layered on top of each other. And so the way we're going to do that is we're going to add a little blur, an extra little path that will have a blur on it. And so starting from our darkest most layer, which is layer 1 if you recall, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this. We can just right click and duplicate it, or we can do Control D. So as you can see, it duplicated into path 1, 1. What I'm going to do is actually bump the color slightly downwards to make it a little bit darker. So as you can see, we can see that color change there. And then what we're going to do is there's filters over here. We're going to do filters, blurs, and then we're just going to blur. And we can do a live preview to see how it will look. But we want to blur this a decent amount in both directions. I'm going to start with around 20. So apply. I accidentally applied it twice. But what we actually want to do is move this down to the bottom, so that way the blur only occurs on the bottom. So again, we're going to do the same thing with this one on the bottom here. Duplicate it and make sure it's underneath. Then we'll change the color to be a little bit darker. Filters, blur, and then we'll blur again. So as you can see, if we zoom in a little bit, there's a little blur here. Yeah, and it's more obvious over here. So next time I probably would choose a color that's a little bit darker than that. But let's move on to the next layer. I'm going to actually duplicate both of these in one go and make them at the bottom. Again, we're going to make the colors a little bit darker. And then we're going to do our blur. Okay, as you can see, that's a lot clearer. So definitely I would choose something on the darker side compared to the layer above it. But yeah, that does look pretty cool. And definitely we don't want to blur it so much that it's actually spilling onto the next layer. So just do a little blur. All right, let's move on to the next layer. Again, we can do this in one go by shift clicking both of them, duplicate them, oops, bring them to the bottom. And then we're going to change the color. And then run our blur filter. Okay, looking good. I'm thinking you're getting the idea, so I'm just going to speed through the rest of this. Alright, and we're finished, and it looks like we're just about done. And you can see it's kind of mimicking that look of stacked construction paper. So we're going to go ahead and export this again, since this is pretty much its final form. We can do File, Export. And we can actually click this little folder icon to see where it's going to go. For now, I'm just going to put it in my downloads folder, and make sure you pick either PNG or JPEG, depending on what kind of file type you like. I like PNG because it's lossless. Alright, and there you go, it's exported. And here's what it looks like. You can see how neat that looks. So yeah, so this was just a quick tutorial showing you a couple of skills in Inkscape that can create you a really nice looking wallpaper. And the great part again is that you can customize this to your heart's content. You can pick new colors and make new variants. And then you can even change the aspect ratio without affecting the quality, just by pushing around these objects here, which are totally customizable, and then changing the document properties. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed and hope you guys can make some awesome wallpapers of your own. Bye!
Thank you guys so very much for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to hit the like button just below this video. If you'd like to watch more from me, I've picked out 2 videos on the left just for you. If you'd like to subscribe, there's my icon on the right. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! No one watches this far in the video, do they?